Someday Angeline by Louis Sachar. Chapter 17, Different Directions. As Angeline walked back to class, Judy Martin was standing in the doorway. "What's the matter, freak?" Judy teased. "You missed a couple of problems." "I don't know," Angeline mumbled. "How did it feel?" Judy continued. "Was that the first time you ever missed one? What was it like?" "I don't know," Angeline said again. "You don't know?" declared Judy. "I guess you're just not so smart anymore, are you?" Philip Corbin butted in. "Yeah, Judy," he said. "She's almost as dumb as you." "Shut up." Christy Mathewson once again came to her rescue. She's missed a week of school," she said. "It will just take her a while to catch up." She walked with Angeline to her seat. "You knew the correct answers, didn't you?" Christy asked her when they were alone. "I don't know," said Angeline. "You shouldn't give the wrong answers when you know they're wrong," said Christy. "That's just like lying." "No talking," declared Mrs. Hardlick. "The bell is rung." Christy quickly and quietly took her seat. Mrs. Hardlick told them to get out their history books. It wasn't like Christy had said, though, thought Angeline. She wasn't lying. She only gave the wrong answers, because that way Mrs. Hardlick wouldn't hate her. It had seemed like such a good idea. Now Christy made her feel bad about it. "Who invented the cotton gin?" asked Mrs. Hardlick. Angeline glanced over at Christy, then looked straight at Mrs. Hardlick. "Yes, Angeline," said Mrs. Hardlick. Angeline thought a moment. "Gymnasium," she said. The words spun around at over 1,000 miles an hour, and Angeline felt like she was spinning around too, in the opposite direction. "So when are you going to ask her out on a date?" Gus asked. Abel felt his heart leap into his mouth. "Who?" he asked. "You know who," said Gus. "Mr. Bone." Abel laughed. Actually, he giggled. "Oh, no," he said. "I can't. She won't. No, I can't do that." He stared out the window over the door. "Okay, fine," said Gus. "You think maybe?" asked Abel. "Could I? No, she's Angeline's teacher. I can't go on a date with Angeline's teacher. Can I? Can I?" "She's not her teacher yet," said Gus. "You can ask her out for tonight. Call her now." "Now?" shouted Abel. "I can't ask her out now." He looked at Gus as if he were crazy. "I smell like garbage." "That's the wonderful thing about telephones," said Gus. "She can't smell you." "No, you still can't go out with your kid's teacher. It's probably against the law. Besides, she probably already has a lot of dates for tonight and is busy grading papers." "Lots of dates for tonight?" questioned Gus. "Okay, so what about Angeline? What would she think if I went out with her teacher?" "She likes Mr. Bone," said Gus. "Yes, that's it," said Abel, "and I told you, her name's not Mr. Bone, it's Melissa Turbone." "That's too bad," said Gus. "It's just that she'll finally have a teacher she likes, and I don't want to do anything to blow it for her. It might be very traumatic for her and result in deep psychological implications." Gus stopped the truck. "What are you doing?" asked Abel. "What are we stopping for?" Gus pointed to at a row of industrial trash bins. "Garbage, Abel, remember?" Angeline ate lunch with Gary, Mr. Bone, and Mr. Bone's fish. She hardly said a word as she ate. She thought about what Christy had said and about Mrs. Hardlick, and none of it seemed to make any sense. "How does it feel to be back in school?" Mr. Bone asked her. She didn't answer her. She stared at the fish. She felt like she needed to go back to the aquarium, or, better still, to the ocean. She sipped a glass of salt water. "We'll be taking that field trip to the aquarium in 3 weeks," said Mr. Bone. "I don't know," said Gary. "That aquarium sounds fishy to me." Angeline didn't laugh. She didn't think it was a very funny joke. Someone knocked on the door, and Gary opened it. "Hey, Goon," said a kid from his class, all out of breath. "Is Mr. Bone in here? Mr. Bone, there's a phone call for you in the office." Mr. Bone laughed, but nobody knew why. It was because when the boy said Mr. Bone, it sounded to her like Mr. Bone. The office was nearly empty when she got there. Everyone except one secretary was at lunch. Mr. Bone walked into the vice principal's office and picked up the phone. "This is Mr. Bone. Melissa?" "Yes," she said, unable to place the voice. "Hi, this is Abel Persopoulos, Angeline's father." "Oh, hello, Abel," she answered warmly. "I was just having lunch with Angeline." Abel nodded. "You haven't changed your mind about switching her to my class, have you?" she asked him. "No," said Abel. He was calling from a payphone at a gas station. Gus had parked the truck across the street and told him he wouldn't move until Abel called up Mr. Bone. "So you got home all right last night?" Abel asked. He was sweating. "Yes? Why? Is it a dangerous trip?" "No, I don't know," said Abel. "You never know." "I had no problems," she assured him. "Well, I just thought I'd call and make sure," he said. "Thank you, Abel. That's very sweet." "Okay, fine," he said, thinking he could now say goodbye to her and then tell Gus that she didn't want to go out with him because of the psychological problems it would cause for Angeline. "Is that all?" Melissa asked him. He paused. "Yes, no," he took a breath. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" "Tonight?" "Yes, see, I wanted to go out with you before Angeline switched to your class. I hear it might be kind of against the law to have dinner with your kid's teacher? Melissa laughed. I would love to go to dinner with you tonight, she said. We'll have to keep our eyes out for cops just the same, she added, playing along with his joke. Since she knew the way to his apartment, she said she'd drive. It's too hard to give directions to my condominium. Abel walked back to the truck. Well, Gus asked eagerly. What? Abel asked innocently. Come on, Gus demanded. What'd she say? Who? Asked Abel. Just tell me what happened and stop being so funny. I'm not being funny, said Abel. I know, said Gus. You're not the least bit funny. So will you tell me what she said? Abel shrugged. We're going out tonight, he said very casually. The bell rang, signifying that lunch was over. Mr. Bone looked around the vice principal's office. I hope it's not against the law, she said aloud, then quickly walked back to class. Out on the sidewalk, a mailman turned and watched a garbage truck drive down the street. He wondered why it kept honking its horn. Mrs. Hardlick told her class that she had some bad news. I just found out, she said, that Angeline will soon be leaving us. Oh, said the class as if they were truly sorry to see her go. Is she moving? Someone asked. Where are you going, Angeline? Asked Judy Martin. She'll still be at school, said Mrs. Hardlick. She's going into Mr. Bone's 5th grade class. That's not fair, said Philip Corbin. She's smart enough to be in the 6th grade easily. She sure is, said Nelson Ford. I know, said Mrs. Hardlick, and just when she was beginning to show some real progress. Isn't that always the way? Why, what's the matter? Don't you like it here, Angeline? Angeline stared at her wide-eyed. Do you think 5th grade is better than 6th grade? Mrs. Hardlick asked. Well, it's not. The 6th grade is best. The 2nd grade is better than 1st grade, and the 3rd grade is better than the 2nd grade, and the 4th grade is better than the 3rd grade, and the 5th grade is better than the 4th grade, and the 6th grade is the best. Angeline was dumbfounded. What was this nonsense? You're too smart for the 5th grade, said Mrs. Hardlick. You belong here with me. Angeline stared at her in disbelief. She felt as if the walls were closing in on her. If you want, said Mrs. Hardlick, I'll talk to the principal about it. I'll ask him to let you stay here. No, Angeline whispered. Pardon? No, she shouted. She didn't mean to shout so loud. She started to cry. Excuse me, she said. She stood up. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. She ran out of the room. She ran across the schoolyard to the bus stop. Her heart was thumping and she was breathing very fast. Her head spun. She paced quickly in front of the bus stop. Fortunately, she didn't have to wait long. She got on a bus, walked to the back, then walked to the front, and sat down somewhere near the middle. She never pulled the cord. She rode the bus all the way as far as it went. Past the high school, past the shopping mall, past the train station, past the tire store, past the hospital, all the way to the ocean. And that's the end of chapter 17.